Until October last year, I would start my day with some time for myself. I would write in my journal, or I would go for a walk, or I would do some yoga, or sometimes I would just lie in bed and think about one thing: what can I do better today? In October last year, my morning routine has changed. I got a smartphone. It is an interesting device, but it hurts my wrist, it hurts my eyes, and I truly hate it, but I'm bound to use it. Sometimes I wonder, my attachment to it, is it a manifestation of a very good designer solution? Or maybe it is something about being future myopic, or very future-sighted in a way. How do we deal with the future is what I would like to talk about today. This piece of technology has altered my morning routine, but not only mine, of course. If we look around, we can see that the landscape of social human behavior has changed drastically, just within 1 decade of smartphones being around. When my students are going into the city for their assignments on participant observation technique, they explore the waiting time in public spaces. We can see this change very vividly. Oftentimes they're also very confused, because one of the articles they read describes a whole plethora of behaviors. People reading a book, or reading a newspaper, or playing a non-computer-based game, sometimes singing, or just staring out of the window. I'm pretty sure all of you can guess what is one single behavior my students are observing now. Yes, it's being on the phone, of course, and it happened only within 10 years or so. Did the designers of those smartphones project themselves into the decade ahead of them and could foresee how it will actually impact our behavior? I'm not really sure, and I don't think so. And this is the case for many of us. Most of the time, we don't create the space for the future in our thinking. We just tend to do the next thing on our agenda. In my research, I wonder, why is it so? And is it possible to change it? So how to create this space for the future? For starters, here are some examples of real-life challenges that we have with the concept of the future. People at the top management positions, 90% of their time spend on resolving the current tasks that they have at hand. And only 10% of their time is actually dedicated to the development of the future strategy of their company. Furthermore, we don't even have the language to talk about the future. There is a lack of future discourse. Yes, we have a concept of pension, we have a concept of mortgage, but are they really effective? We can debate about it. And most importantly, in my opinion, we lack imagination. In one of my research projects, we discovered that people could not really engage in imagining the future, which is a little bit distant from them. Say 80 years from now. People would really easily jump into some ready-made science fiction images and characters, and they would not engage in creating their own images of the future. And also, we are not cognitively equipped for imagining very long time spans, such as 100,000 of years. It becomes very abstract, and we can't really relate to it at all. Although we have already created something that is going to last 100,000 years, and we will have an effect on us for that long, maybe even longer, it is the nuclear waste. Independently from our attitude towards it, it's already here. And practically, how does 100,000 of years map out on the 4 years of the average governmental time? Good question. At the very least, it's rather overwhelming. Therefore, I'm wondering, how is it possible to develop these new skills of futurization? How to create the space for the future in our behavior today? and how to think about the future without being overwhelmed by it, without being scared of it or feeling guilty, but to make future more relatable and actionable. In my current research on futurization of thinking and behavior, we see a striking contrast between the personal and the global future. When I ask people to imagine their personal future, it would look like something like this. People talk about their personal goals, important life events, achieving success, having a family, a big house and a dog. However, when imagining the global future, it would be something like this. People mention extreme weather conditions, mass human extinction, climate chaos. Unless you're living in China. Then it's a much more positive and peaceful image. The environmental issues are still of concern, but people also believe that we have the technology to resolve this crisis. The difference in perceiving the global future between the countries is very striking. We can see here that people living in the United States and Denmark perceive global future much more negative than people who live in China. It's almost the opposite. Another interesting detail here is that when we ask people, what is the time span you imagine for your personal future and for the global future? And people say it's between 15 to 30 years for both. So then my question for us, influenced by the Western culture, is how do we plan our personal success when we believe that the world is doomed? I don't know. But I think it's quite interesting to ponder about. Let's take a look at how people imagine other aspects of the future. If future would be represented by a type of a person, people have described it as a quiet, healthy, apathetic Schitzo. It's quite a portrait. In terms of colors, people see it as a rather lifeless cold palette. It's white, shiny, illuminated, chrome, steel gray, shining silver with some hints of blue and green. It is an environment where photosynthesis is not possible. There is no life. And if future would be a person, it would look like this. Superheroes, cartoon characters, robots, public figures connected to technology, a predominantly male picture. There was only one female character, and it was an android. Imagine, is that how overpopulation will resolve itself? Well, maybe. And if future would be a profession, which type of job would it be? One person answered, it will be a huge office filled with computer screens and people sitting there writing meaningless emails, just like zombies. So we asked, would you want to be in that position? And he said, no, I'd rather be a janitor in that place. So we see alienated, colorless, lifeless image that we don't want to be part of. Paraphrasing James Joyce then, future is a nightmare from which we are all trying to escape. How do we create a future that we would like to be part of? How do we create conditions for meaningful actions to emerge? We discovered that there are people who appreciate their past. They learn from both positive and negative experiences. They're also much more present and mindful, but at the same time they have a sense of direction for their future. And they can expand their future horizon into much more distant future and also bring it into their lives here in the present. When they act, they do that from a very strong position of empathy and feeling of connectedness to the outside world instead of feeling of guilt or fear. Such people are a small part of population, only 5 to 15%. They found the balance between their own personal time in terms of their past, present and future. They live in harmony with themselves and it provides the conditions for living in harmony with the outside world as well and taking care of it. Therefore, studying this group gives me a lot of hope. And for some, this balance comes out very naturally. And for the rest of us, and me included here, the good news is that we can actually also learn to become more balanced. I had to adjust my morning behavior due to this new piece of technology that came into my life. If it is here, I'm going to use it, so I had to eliminate the choice. So what I do, at home I switch off the Wi-Fi for the night, and I think I just need to get a very simple alarm clock, because otherwise I'm using my phone for that, and then it's just, the story goes from there. And I would really like to have my morning back. To sum up, thinking about the future is complex. And of course, it's getting more and more difficult because the rate of change is increasing. But at the same time, it's incredibly important, even though we are not very good at it. Our first step here could be developing these new skills of futurization so that we can also have more inner balance and harmony. And we can do so by learning from people for whom it happens naturally. And finally, I would like to encourage you to take the time to be more aware, to stop and reflect. What am I actually doing? What am I spending my time on? What type of impact my actions will have? Will it contribute to this continuous software nightmare? What do I want to see out of my window in 10 years? What about 80 years from now? How do I want my world to look like tomorrow?